sending out messages over the airwaves and talking to callers who tell her their issues and their stories. That's what I think separates this movie from all the movies we have seen some of the Disney stars star in over the last probably 6 to 7 months. Very few Disney stars have that formula carried over from the success they had in Disney into independently shot films, but I think Debbie Ryan definitely has that. Vanessa Hudgens had it with Journey to the Mysterious Island with her co-star Dwayne Johnson. Very few people have that formula carried over from the success they've had with Disney, and I think that this one is phenomenal. And the thing that you're going to notice in this film too is how difficult for the character Tara the transition is from broadcasting in your bedroom, doing a podcast radio show with a program like Winamp or YouTube, being your video or audio service provider. The transition that she has to make from being someone who broadcasts the show in her bedroom to a syndicated radio network. She finds that very difficult. And I'm going to tell you, firsthand, I'm talking about this because I'm a radio show host who pretty much does the same thing. I've done a couple of syndicated stuff over the years, and it's a very difficult transition, talking behind a microphone in your bedroom, then going from that to talking over the internet on websites like blogtalkradio.com or using Winamp or doing some work with people who've been involved with syndicated radio before in the past. It's a very difficult transition to make, and usually I get the question via email or Twitter or Facebook, what are the steps I have to go through to make a transition to start my own radio show? It's a very difficult procedure, and it's something that I wouldn't advise anyone to do. You have to really know what you're doing, what your format of your show is going to be, what your service provider is going to be, for example, YouTube or Winamp, which I would assume is the service provider that Tara, the character in the film Radio Rebel, was using. It's a very difficult transition to do, and over the last 13 years, I'm saying this because I'm a radio DJ myself, it is very difficult to create a show and have it the way that you want it to be. And if you're one of the fortunate radio show hosts who actually get your radio show to be the way you want it to be with your guests, your callers, your service provider, in my case services like Live 365, blogtalkradio.com, Live Now, it's very difficult to get your radio show the way that you want it to be, and very few websites will offer you that service for free. You have to sacrifice a cost to do it. You have to find yourself a service provider that will actually allow you to broadcast your show in the way that you want it to be broadcasted. And this is the thing that Radio Rebel had to transition from, a show that she was broadcasting the way she wanted it broadcast into a show that the way the network wanted it broadcast. And once her identity was discovered, a couple of sacrifices were made by the student body, and of course that's where the conflict comes into the film. Of course, the prom is jeopardized because the identity of Radio Rebel is wanted to be discovered by the principal of the school. So here's what happens. Everybody's contributing to the Radio Rebel program on Slam FM once the transition is made from a show that is done via podcast in a bedroom to a syndicated radio network, which I wouldn't advise anybody to get involved with, because doing syndicated radio is very different from broadcasting a show in your bedroom via a internet service provider like Blog Talk or YouTube. They're all supporting the show because they believe the message that Radio Rebel is conveying is a good message, a positive message. So basically what the school does with the anti-distraction policy after a lunchtime marathon is done by Slam FM that doesn't really get over well with the school's principal. She makes the decision to cancel the prom, which is the biggest event of the year for every high school. I'm sure many of you have your memories of prom kept with you in your heart from years gone by. She cancels the prom. The prom is in jeopardy. They come up with the idea to have their own version of prom to save Radio Rebel's reputation, and her identity is not unveiled until the end of the film. I don't mean to ruin it for you. It's a very strong message that this film conveys. It is a family film that is rated PG, and it definitely, I'm not going to lie to you, it touched my heart in a lot of ways because, I could relate to the film. One of the big reasons why I could relate to it was because I'm a radio DJ myself who's had over 800 guests on the show, and there were times when I was watching the film saying to myself, well, this has got to be inspired by me and other radio show hosts, because this is phenomenal. This film was released in 2012 with very known actors and actresses: Adam DeMarco, Serena Palmer. Debbie Ryan did a phenomenal job with this thing, and definitely it's inspired by, radio show hosts who want to be somebody different and can only be that when they get behind the microphone. I've had it said to me many times when I've been doing this radio thing, you sound like a different person when you get behind the microphone. You say what you want, you back up your opinions, and you share your opinions and ideas with a worldwide audience, and this is what Radio Rebel did. She was very shy in person, but once she got behind the microphone in her bedroom, mentioning several times throughout the film, it was very different going from a show that was done in her bedroom to syndicated radio, how she could actually use the microphone to, get her opinion across. It's very different, definitely, behind the microphone for me, because, I really back up my opinion in different things more so than I do in real life. Very shy person in real life, so that's why I could relate to this film. It's very different, but that's the thing that the film definitely encourages. If you have an opinion, don't be afraid to share it with anybody, and you see that throughout the course of the film. A lot of the supporting cast members who, portray different callers in the film, share their opinion. It's definitely trying to get people to share their opinion via the internet, if anything, at a radio show by contributing the best way they know how, by calling in. There's a lot of conversation generated about Radio Rebel in the film on Twitter and Facebook. Fans say things like, "Don't take Radio Rebel away. Please don't take our music away." It's a very different film that I wouldn't expect Debbie Ryan to be in. And when I saw the previews, a couple of interviews that Debbie had done for the film, promoting it, I didn't think initially this was going to be a film that would go anywhere or, have any kind of publicity. But once I saw an interview that YTV, the kids network here in Canada, put together with Debbie Ryan, a couple of Debbie Ryan interviews will be on our Twitter page next couple of days when they drop, and this audio commentary drops on our Twitter and YouTube pages. I wasn't too struck on the film. I didn't really understand what this film was really all about. But once I saw, the story behind it, the film, once it was put together and shot independently, I guess, by a couple of unknown film companies that Debbie had never worked for in the past, it was great. This film had to look fantastic on paper when they were doing board meetings about it. It was really good. It was about an hour and a half without the commercials, and it will be available on Blu-ray and DVD, I do assume. I have no date for the release of this one. But she has her enemies in the film. Very few people know about her identity. It seemed like a cross between Hannah Montana and Camp Rock, in my opinion, for a lot of different reasons. Very few people knew about her identity, only her close personal friends. Throughout the film, more and more people get to know who she is in real life. Halfway through the film, she tells her best friend who she is, saying, "It's very difficult for me to unveil my identity." Her friend accepts her, and she has this guy who she really likes, and the guy, of course, blames Radio Rebel for jeopardizing the chance he had of asking his crush to the prom. The prom is a very huge thing in this film because it is jeopardized in a lot of ways. Radio Rebel has to reveal her identity to save the prom. The students derive a solution to this by coming up with their own version of prom. Something like I saw back when they shot an edition of Victorious, calling a prom a prom. It's a very different film with a lot of very creative and influential ideas. And as I said, it's very difficult making a transition from doing a radio show that you're not afraid to do because you pretend like nobody is listening, from doing a show in your bedroom to doing a syndicated radio show. Syndicated radio is something that I wouldn't advise anybody to get involved with. It is very different from doing a show via Winamp or YouTube from your bedroom, because you don't have to worry about sponsors, you don't have to worry about people coming after you for money. I found myself caught up in a lot of different situations over the years doing radio shows. I mean, I was doing radio shows long before a lot of radio shows were using YouTube and Blog Talk Radio to promote themselves because they were offered a free form to express their opinion. People are very different once they get behind a microphone via Blog Talk or YouTube, because they feel like, you got probably 5 or 10 listeners, and they feel like a whole different person who can get away with saying their opinion because they have enough evidence to back up their claims, and they feel like their claims are legitimate. And once you meet them in real life, they're not like the person you heard on the radio at all. Very few people live up to the expectations once they're off of a microphone or an internet service provider expressing their opinion. They're usually not the same person they are behind the microphone. And they always cover up their true identity by a radio Alice. A couple of key things about this film is this film definitely incorporates a lot of real life scenarios and angles. And I think a lot of people are going to be able to relate to this movie. I definitely recommend the radio show hosts that use internet forums like Blog Talk and Winamp and Live Now and Live 365 to check this film out, because I know, and I guarantee you almost 110%, 95% of you who do these radio shows are going to be able to relate. It's about a girl, of course, who starts doing a radio show in her bedroom because her school has an anti-distraction policy where no music is allowed, no radios are allowed. It's all about learning and educational environments to the school. And you see the characters change so much from the beginning of the film to the end of the film. It's kind of like Twilight, when Taylor Lautner referred to the film as being a metamorphosis process for a lot of the characters. They change so much from the beginning of the film to the end of the film. She's so concerned about her identity being revealed, and halfway through the film, that character goes through this unbelievable metamorphosis. Not only her, but the characters that can't stand her have a lot of hatred built up inside of them towards Radio Rebel change, because they earn the respect of Radio Rebel, and Radio Rebel earns the respect to them in conjunction. You see a lot of things in this film, and I think the metamorphosis of the characters is one thing that you're going to notice. But not only